What's happening right now in the crypto market is one of the toughest phases I've seen in a long time. We're on the verge of an all-time high, but interest is dead. No one cares about crypto. Nobody is investing in altcoins anymore. YouTube numbers and everything else are completely dead. Recently, I showed you 3 scenarios that we could theoretically see here. First, the scenario where we set a new all-time high right now during this period. Then, the scenario where we probably reach our all-time high in Q4 2025, or that we're already slipping into a bear market now. All 3 scenarios have their merits, and all 3 are theoretically possible. However, I'm still speculating on the second scenario, that we could reach our all-time high in Q4 2025, because the current sentiment is really completely dead. But the whole thing kind of reminds me of 2017, when the market was dead for weeks, nobody was interested, and then suddenly we broke out of nowhere. That's what this whole situation reminds me of a bit, because I still believe that in this cycle we will see at least $160,000 to $200,000. So in this range we will definitely reach our bull run top, if not even higher. I'm pretty sure that we'll hit 160,000 in this cycle, and on these final legs it's especially the altcoins that should perform. That's how it was in the past, of course. We should see 160,000. Just by overlaying the M2 money supply onto Bitcoin, we can see that we should already reach 160,000 for Bitcoin. That's just based on the M2 money supply. And then, of course, there's the added euphoria. On top of that, interest rates are being cut in the US, which means we're also seeing an expansion of the money supply there, and so on. That's why I'm really optimistic here, especially since we're constantly seeing that the Bitcoin ETFs are receiving further inflows. Michael Saylor is buying in larger and larger amounts, and so on. The big players are buying like crazy, while retail investors are completely absent. I'm very optimistic here. But the thing is, what you have to acknowledge is that Bitcoin dominance is still quite strong. And that's why the altcoins just aren't getting anything from the market. And our altcoin window is simply getting smaller by the day. You need to be aware of that. If we do see an altcoin season now, it probably won't last 9 or 12 months anymore, but at most 5 months. And the longer this drags on, the shorter our altcoin season will probably be. That is, if we continue to follow a similar timeline and data pattern as in the past. But it also makes sense that we're currently in a Bitcoin season, because just look at the gold price. Gold is at an all-time high. Of course, in that case, altcoins can't perform, because when gold is at an all-time high, it means we're facing some real-world problem. That means people have fled to gold instead of investing in crypto, stocks, or anything else right now. This clearly indicates that investors currently don't want to take any risks. But that will change once gold starts to fall, because that will signal to us that the panic is over and that we can definitely expect things to rise again soon. You should understand this in relation to Bitcoin dominance, because it's not that altcoins aren't rising now because the market has completely changed. No, it's simply that there are so many unresolved problems in the real world right now that people don't want to take unnecessary risks. And that's how it's always been in the past. When the gold price drops, money gets reallocated again. So everything that's happening here is going according to plan. And that's always how it goes. That's why, in this regard, I wouldn't worry at all at this point. Because one thing should be clear to you. This is the XAP price chart for this cycle. We were in a bear market the whole time. Things weren't going well, it didn't look good, but when the breakout came, it was massive. And XAP is a coin that's really highly valued. So what do you think could happen with the other coins? Because with our other coins, nowhere near as much money needs to be invested for us to see such price explosions. With Cardano, it was similar in this cycle. We did have upward trends, but we also had long sideways phases. But when the breakout came, it was massive. And you should be aware of that. No matter what you think about this cycle, we've seen again in this cycle that with altcoins, things can change drastically overnight. And if in such a case we get an overheated Bitcoin and onboard a few retail investors, we could very quickly slip into an altcoin season. That's why, in my opinion, this altcoin season is not a myth. The altcoin season can definitely still happen. Otherwise, let's talk about some projects I'm keeping an eye on, where I would consider accumulating. On the one hand, I think the AI narrative is super cool, but by now it's clear that most projects in this area don't have a real use case. Most projects are nonsense, most projects will die off, but a project like Binance or Tau, in my opinion, will stand out like a phoenix rising from the ashes, because Tau has already broken through several price targets, where from a technical analysis perspective, you'd have to say, okay, that actually didn't look so good, but we managed to recover every time. And right now, we're looking really good again. Internally, Tau is also the best AI project we have so far. We're seeing more and more AI projects being built on top of it because Tau offers a really solid AI infrastructure. Based purely on Elliott wave analysis, we're targeting $2,500. That's my bullish target for Bitensor. But first, it's important that we break through our previous all-time high. Then we'll move into wave 3, then comes the corrective wave 4, and then wave 5. And after wave 5, we would then move into the bear market, but here we really have price targets of $2,500. And as I said, everything looks good on-chain. In my opinion, it's the best AI project, and that's also reflected in the price, in this price stability, because other AI projects have corrected much more sharply during this bear market phase. Then we have a project like Syrup, or also called Maple Finance. It's a rather lesser known project with a market cap of 500 million, but it's incredibly impressive. The project kind of came out of nowhere and connects the DeFi sector with the real world. With Maple Finance, you can take out loans, lend loans, and so on. So basically what a bank does, just decentralized. And we've really heard that a lot already. There are many projects that do exactly the same thing. That's just a fact. But there are few projects that have such a use case. 2 years ago, the TVL here was 2 million. Today, the TVL is almost 2 billion. Look at how we've built this up. Just look at this growth, how quickly we've achieved such on-chain activity here. It's incredible. And trust me, guys, if we are seeing this kind of growth during such a bad market phase, it's going to be way, way crazier in a bull run, because DeFi is especially interesting during a bull run. In a bull run, people don't want to go to the banks to cash out. They move into DeFi, and that's when things here get really interesting. That's why I'm extremely optimistic here. Here, I've set price targets of $4.50, but of course, we only expect to reach those in a fully developed bull run. From here, that would be at least another 650%. That should definitely be achievable, because right now we're still massively undervalued. And this really is a fresh project. In terms of TVL though, we're positioned much higher than our market cap. And to me, that already indicates that the project is definitely undervalued for now. And as I said, this kind of growth will be way, way more extreme during the euphoria phase. That's why I'm extremely optimistic here. Another project that I think is super cool is ENA, also known as Ethena. Here, we're simply in a very bad downtrend. You just have to say it as it is. It gets interesting if we break through here, but we're also expecting big price targets because Ethena is a project that really has a use case in this space. We just don't have many projects where you can say they have a use case or this or that is working well. With Ethena, we have the big problem, for example, with the tokens. Right now, we have really high inflation, and this inflation is also pushing the price down. But the thing is, during the euphoric phase, nobody cares about any kind of inflation, because what Ethena is already accomplishing in the background is incredible. At times, they've had fees of $6 million within 24 hours. And that's just because people are using stablecoins through Ethena. Here, you can borrow stablecoins, take out loans, and so on. But above all, Ethena is mainly responsible for enabling people to trade with stablecoins. And stablecoins really have their own use case in this bubble, because people have realized there aren't many use cases here, but stablecoins in particular have an enormous use case. Stablecoins are used for so many things, it's incredible. And Ethena has a market cap of 2 billion, but now has a TVL of 5 billion, which is incredibly huge. That means, from a market perspective, we are definitely undervalued here. And even just looking at the fees, we see that if we take in about 6 million in fees per day, we would generate our entire market cap in revenue in just 1 year. So, as you can see, we are massively undervalued here. As I said, of course, this inflation naturally puts downward pressure on the price, but overall, we are very cheap here. And I believe that in the euphoric phase, Ethena can really perform well, because we truly have a project here with real use cases. Here we also expect price targets of at least $2.88, but it could definitely go higher. That means from here we're looking at least another 900% that we could see with Ethereum in this cycle. One of the best projects at the moment, to be completely honest, a project that generates so much revenue, that actually moves so much money, that conducts so much trading in the background. It's incredible. We're almost as big as Circle. And Circle is a publicly traded company that's valued at nearly 10 times as much as Ethereum. And just from that comparison alone, I really believe that Ethereum is undervalued here. And at this point, friends, as always, I want to sincerely thank you for watching. Leave a like and a comment on the video. And with that, I'd say see you next time. Bye.